people's minds one person at a time. Even if you were able to change people's minds one person at a time, you're still not going to be able to enact systemic change.
We didn't have enough conversations with white conservatives. You hear a lot more of that talk than about how the gutting of the Voting Rights Act
Like, I know people that were at January 6th, okay? Not like directly and immediately, but I know people that went to January 6th. If you try to have a conversation with them about January 6th, to this day, they say Antifa was responsible for January 6th. It's like, bro, you were there. What the fuck do you mean Antifa is responsible? Like, you were there. Yeah, but Antifa did the whole bad stuff. We did the good stuff. So it's like, good luck. Good luck to changing that person's mind. Okay?
Cost a lot of the left the right to vote, and what could be done to guarantee their representation in the next election. In fact, you hear a lot more about how that kind of talk is alienating to the white conservatives who supported gutting the Voting Rights Act. About how reaching across the aisle is going to mean easing off the race talk, at least for now. POC representation is quickly reframed as a critical long-term goal, but in the present moment, while we are competing for elected office, guaranteeing the minority vote is a luxury. What's prioritized is that the people who suppressed the black vote in order to win elections not be made to feel that they are racist.
Kuguchi, thank
because,
you.
I mean, what if they genuinely
Falco,
believe the Voting Rights
Attila,
Act unfairly
and
targets southern states? Or even if, and I'm saying if here, they did do it to suppress votes. If hurting black people isn't their goal and they're just trying to win elections, is that really racist? Moderates are very cagey about breaking out the R word for a fellow white person. See, there's this other definition of racism that most white people learn in grade school. Racism is when you say mean things to other kids about skin color and it hurts their feelings.
Which is why there's such a thing as anti-white racism, according to Twitch. Which is why I was banned for 7 fucking days off this godforsaken platform for saying the C word by a community of people, guided by a community of people that manufactured outrage enough that Twitch would fucking literally ban me. I will never let that go. It is so fucking abysmally stupid.
Racism is about cruelty, and harm done by white people, therefore, is not racism if it isn't cruel, if it's merely ignorant or apathetic. But ignorance and apathy can be reasoned with. You just gotta sit down and hash it out, as long as it takes. Real white supremacy is about emotional distress or interpersonal violence. It's uncommon, it's unpopular, and it's a hearts and minds issue. What this definition leaves out is any notion that white supremacy is about power. That white people who disavow racism still live longer, get paid better, get arrested less often, and are typically in position to negotiate with whomever's in power. That this society was built for the everyman, and being the everyman confers power upon you. When children of white moderates get older and first...
Yeah, it's not... My racism knows no bounds. First, it was against white people. Then it was against the slave owners that escaped Cuba during the Cuban Revolution. And now my racism knows no bounds. Apparently, Italians can get some too. Where the fuck is it? I saw someone was talking about it earlier. I'm surprised it's not up still. I guess they took it down. Oh, here it is. Oh, never mind. Someone re-uploaded it, but they took it down for politics. Thank God. But it was I was racist against Italians. And people literally were trying to take it seriously. Like there were people who were joking and and it was mostly a joke. And then there were people who were like, yeah, we got it.
Against this definition, wherein white supremacy is not small, but all-encompassing. Where it can be cruel, but is at least as often indifferent, and where every white person in the country is bound up in it and privileged by it, whether they want to be or not, and will never, ever experience it themselves, where it's not about feelings, but about power. How often do they say, oh, maybe the definition I grew up with was simplified for 9-year-olds? Or, oh, maybe the definition given to me by white grown-ups was less complete than one a black grown-up might have given? And how often do they say, you can't just redefine racism? Right out the gate, the white moderate is possessive not just of their whiteness, but of the very definition of racism. In the definition they know, racism exists only over here. And the white collaborator is a compatriot who shares their ultimate vision for the future and is simply gone off course somewhere. And they don't see themselves as flawed individuals with a long way still to go. They've already arrived. They're the destination everyone else needs to get to. Living proof that white supremacy can be easily and painlessly opted out of. They can't see collaborators as opponents because there is no definition of white supremacy that includes collaborators and doesn't also include them. And this is critically important. They don't want to start thinking of themselves as white. They don't want the constant awareness of one's race and how one's race is perceived. You know, the things the rest of humanity deals with. And who would want that? I'll tell you who wants that. Nazis and Klansmen want that. They're the only ones who like thinking about whiteness every day. So white moderates cling to the other definition, the comfortable one. They may be more or less willing to collaborate with people of color, but mostly in ways that don't foreground their whiteness. White as default is one concession that can never be made, in part because it's the one that can't be spoken. Their ideal is a kind of big tent anti-racism, where victory comes by winning over reactionary conservatives. That might strike you as odd, given that reactionary conservatives have seen many victories over the last 20 years, and it's not like they did it by winning over us. White supremacists bolster their numbers by finding little disgruntled pockets of America that have not heretofore engaged much in politics, and radicalizing them to the cause, and then pitching themselves to white collaborators as a demographic now large enough to sway a narrow election. If moderates wanted to counter this strategy, they might look at who out there is sympathetic to progressive causes but isn't voting. Maybe because they don't feel liberal candidates represent them. Or maybe because someone just happened to shut down all the polling locations in their neighborhood. And, you know, mathematically, there's probably a lot more disenfranchised people of color who match that description than racist white people who aren't already Republicans. But that strategy would mean doubling down on anti-racist talking points instead of easing off of them. It would mean a willingness to alienate some white people. It's giving up on them.
And white people vote. And if you want black people and people of color in general and poor people to vote, then you got to make it easier for them to vote, which in turn is an entirely difficult endeavor to accomplish. So you don't want to do that. So you just play with an ever shrinking base of like suburban voters that might go to Obama, but then they're going to go to Trump, but then maybe they'll come back from Trump to Joe Biden. And those are like the main people that change the political dynamic. It's like in total, it's probably like 100,000 people to 200, 300,000 people that shift their votes that you need to like hyper focus on and hyper target. And that's American politics, baby.
It's admitting that a significant percentage of American whiteness is not on the side of racial equity. It means there's a definition of racism where it isn't fringe, but common and pervasive, and where addressing it requires thinking about their place in it. It means asking why they feel more affinity for white people who oppose them than people of color they claim to agree with.
Muffin Monstar and Shush Jordan, thank you for the 10 gifted subs.
Why the votes of the former have to be earned, but the latter are expected. And since all that seems intolerable, they fixate on the kinds of gestures that feel like moving in the right direction, but run very little risk of arriving anywhere. How about instead of defunding the police, we give them more money than any administration in years, but also Juneteenth is a national holiday now. Something for everyone. The left has the numbers to leave behind white centrists who slow down anti-racist efforts. And it doesn't, because white moderates don't want to. They and the white collaborators are supposed to be in this together. And they are. Just not in the way they think. The irony is that the right feels no affinity for white moderates whatsoever. They hate, and I mean hate, white moderates. Smug pricks always talking about unity whenever they win an election. Reach across the aisle? That's what you say when you've lost and you want the other guys to make concessions they don't have to make. You don't do it when you're in power. Are they trying to humiliate us, or did we really lose to a bunch of clowns who don't even know how to win right? Debasing themselves in front of minorities just to get their votes when they clearly aren't going to do anything real for them? Christ, at least the white supremacists are honest. The right will threaten POC sometimes just to call the white moderates bluff. Racism must be understood as more than a set of individual beliefs and feelings, but as a tool for achieving political ends. First and foremost, because claiming otherwise is both factually and morally wrong, but also,
with that emoji.
Without this understanding, white culture can't recognize the stakes. Fascism exists in a state of permanent conflict. Things like declaring an indefinite state of martial law, suspending elections, or executing members of government are justified on the grounds that the people are in danger and need to be...
From a they. And they could be international financial speculators. They could be any given George Soros, any number of different demons that are responsible. And of course, the main demon is never capitalism. It's never the system that has subjected you to so much oppression and cruelty for no reason other than the underlying profit motive, right? And there's always a they. There will always be a they. If there isn't a they that you can tangibly associate with, they'll make up a they.
Protected and mobilized. Now, this isn't unique to fascism. Between the Cold War, the war on drugs, and the war on terror, the US has been in some form of ongoing conflict for the last 3 generations. But you'll note the Cold War didn't end on a battlefield. It ended when the Soviet Union collapsed in on itself. Communism, terrorism, and drug dealing are patterns of behavior, and they wax and wane, often for reasons outside our control. Geopolitics may someday shift such that terrorism becomes less prevalent, or that lowers the demand for drugs.
Matt Chrisman had a really interesting take on this that I literally DM'd him over afterwards. I was listening to one of the Chapo episodes where he was talking about the Beltway Garage, doing analysis with Dave Weigel, formerly of Washington Post, friend of the show, Dave Weigel. And he said something really interesting. He was like, if you were to tell me that in 2022 there would be a Sunni Muslim candidate with a good shot at winning a Pennsylvania Senate seat, where inside of that never-ending back and forth, inside of that political struggle, they never brought up the fact that he's a Muslim, I would have looked at you like you're out of your fucking mind. And it's truly a demonstrable example that the war on terror was such a gigantic fucking failure that they don't even talk about it anymore. And even Oz is not a Muslim man, come on. No, dude, you don't understand Americans, baby. You're crazy. You are very far removed from the concept of Islam or living as a Muslim or being even Muslim fucking adjacent in the United States of America. Okay? Or maybe you guys are literally fucking Zoomers and you don't understand. They called Obama a Muslim, man. His middle name is Hussein. No shot. His name is Mehmet, which is a Turkish version of Muhammad. Okay? It's too close. Are you out of your fucking mind, dude? Are you insane? That race happening in like 2007, literally, they're like, your ties to terrorists are very known. It's very well known. You're a radical Islamist terrorist. Why won't Dr. Oz denounce radical Islamist terror? What ended up happening is that the war on terror was such a fucking gigantic L that the Republicans have now completely, they've moved on to the new enemy. The new enemy is gender panic. The new enemy is family values. Like, not even Republicans, just like American politicians in general. Hillary Clinton, when running against Barack fucking Obama, literally is the first person that said he might be Muslim. Many of you Zoomers don't even know this. Hillary Clinton's team was responsible for that photo coming out of Obama wearing the turban, head wrap. Yeah. Yeah. Y'all don't know your American contemporary political history. That's why you come to me. I'm telling you. This notion that a Sunni Muslim Turkish man would be running on the fucking Republican ticket in a place like Pennsylvania that's like swinging towards Republican seats. Holy shit, dude. Y'all are crazy. Yeah, Clinton aides claim Obama photo wasn't intended as a smear. Look at that. Come on. Come on now. Now, of course, they don't do that line as much anymore, but if you still have like very obviously Muslim candidates, very obviously Muslim politicians like Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, who their very existence in Congress implies that the war on terror rhetoric is like kind of a dud now. People don't really give a shit. They don't want to think about it because it's a loss. Okay? They still weaponize it against them, right? Someone said, "Oh my God, he actually Muslim. What the fuck?" What? No, he's not, man. What? My man, that was not the intended purpose of me showing you that photo. That's hilarious, dude. Someone just went, that's a 14-year-old piece of agitprop, and someone just fell for it, dude. Got him. Sorry.
Communism can be fought with diplomacy and economic sanctions because communists can choose not to be communist anymore. And fascists have no use for soft power. To justify a military dictatorship, they need an opponent that won't just go away on its own one day. It always comes back to identity politics, because black people can't stop being black. Theirs is a number that will not be reduced without the hard power of violence and displacement. Fascism begins by stealing targets from the left. They focus on elites, corrupt businessmen, weak-willed politicians, subtly shifting focus away from leftist critique of systems to types of people. But sooner or later, they settle on something unchangeable: race, gender, ethnicity, religious background. The bigotry is localized to the region's existing prejudices. In Nazi Germany, it was Jews, Jehovah's Witnesses, Roma, Slavs, black people, queer people, and people with disabilities. In fascist Italy, it was Slovenes, until Mussolini invaded Libya and Ethiopia, and so demonized their citizens as well. In the US, the Klan and the American Nazi Party targeted African Americans, Jews, Catholics, queer people, and immigrants. Spain under Franco tried to determine the exact racial makeup of the Spanish people so they could cast out those with the wrong mixture of bloods. This is why the far right has gone all in on transphobia, by the way. Like, it's joined Islamophobia on the outer rim of acceptable bigotries. On some level, they know trans folks aren't just cis people in disguise, that desistance is rare and conversion therapy doesn't work, because if trans people could just stop being trans, they never would have picked them for an enemy. This is where it starts. This is why you should have no patience for anyone saying wokeness is dividing the left. We should be focusing on class. They're not attacking us on class. They're trying to sell themselves as better on class than we are. Where do you think that fairy tale about blue-collar whites comes from? They want you to believe that they, and not the socialists, are the path.
Which is hilarious. Like, I love this. I love this so much because it's like, and there are so many fucking, like, reactionary podcasters that started off as leftists that fall into this, which is so fucking awesome. It's like the only tangible quality of the working class is just that they're racist. Like, which of course implies that there are no trans people in the working class. There are no black people in the working class. Like, it's just a hyper-specific subsect of working class that is, out of work coal miners. Okay? And that's it. The only people that are working class are like the out of work coal miners that are only white, not any of the other races. Okay? Only white out of work coal miners who are racist themselves. That is the only fucking person that has ever held a job in the United States of America that was a real fucking job. That's it. And the more racist you are, the more you say, the N-word or whatever the fuck you want to say, the more working class you are. That's why this distinction is so fucking idiotic in America. It's like so, like the concept of a proletarian is so washed in and shrouded in mystery that like the only way to sift through that adequately is by just saying the closer you are in proximity to a type of job where you're working in a fucking oil refinery or a coal mine, the more working class you are. Anyone else is not working class. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was a fucking barback, okay? But because she's a woman and she's Latina and she's from New York, she was never seen as a working class individual. And as a matter of fact, her working class background was seen as an own, as a diss, they kept saying she was fucking a loser. Whereas Ted Theodore Jebediah Bourgeois went to fucking Harvard Cruz was always seen working class. Like even people like him, they never consider him to be anything but like a real American, a working class American. Why? Because he puts the snakeskin boots on, he's got a big belt buckle, and he says he's from Texas. That's it. Is this working class? The fuck is this?
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Hey, how you doing? Hey, sorry to bother you. I'm Fernando. I work at Peak Energy. We're a few doors down. We're in 1845.
Okay.
So we do solar around here. We're just coming around talking to niggers. Sorry, dude. Neighbors. I apologize, man.
I know.
No, man, that wasn't even...
Now, Fernando right there, that's working class right there. That's a working class man. His working class power level is so high. That's not going to look good on Yelp. Bro thought he was in a COD lobby, dude. That's crazy.
Forward for the downtrodden. There's a reason fascism started popping up all over Europe right after the Russian Revolution. Mussolini got his start beating up socialists in the Po Valley on the grounds that he was defending not wealthy elites, but struggling rural farmers who didn't like the socialist takeover of their industry during the Bienio Rosso. The fascist goal is to harness and redirect class resentment towards a scapegoat. They come at us on identity. It always comes down to the shape of the human skull. When a provocateur shows up on a college campus to talk about ideas, it's not a debate. There's no special sequence of words that will defeat them. This is a show of dominance. They are presenting themselves as white compatriots to be reasoned with, rather than agents of white supremacy to be opposed. In that framing, the stakes are attention, the weapons are words, and people of color are not players but tokens on a white person's game board. And they are checking whether you will submit to that structure. They don't care about ideas. They care about power. And power is what beats them. They tell you 400 people showing up to protest is just free news coverage. But when 4,000 show up, they cancel. That's power. And in absolute numbers, most events, they can't rustle up 4,000 supporters. But we can, provided cishet non-disabled white dude lefties like myself haven't told all the right's biggest targets that their struggles don't matter. And it's worth mentioning, cops fuck with protesters less when some of them are white. It's also worth mentioning racism affects 58% of the working poor, so there can be no class solidarity that doesn't address it. This isn't who needs to win. This is who needs to win. And if you're white, you need to be over here. I've collected as many resources as I can find by POC on what they need and want from white allies, and put them in the down there part. There's a plurality of opinions on this, so I recommend reading more than one, and it may not always be a 4,000 strong protest. Every direct action is unique, and must be strategized in concert with the people most affected. But what I can tell you is, when business gets done, white folks need to split the check. A movement cannot be anti-fascist if it isn't anti-racist.
That was great. That's the Alt-Right Playbook, The Cost of Doing Business by Innuendo Studios. He makes wonderful videos like this. I recommend every single part of his Alt-Right Playbook. Very good videos overall. Big fan. Let's move on to more fun stuff like the button that ejects your date. There's a new button episode out, and also there's a new Jubilee on I'm a Sociopath, Ask Me Anything. I kind of want to watch both of these. Let's take a look. Let's get started.
I do play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, but I think I...
Bye-bye. Welcome to The Button, a speed dating show.
I mean,
When
agreed.
the button lights up red,